Hey, let's send it. You ready?
Let's do this. Yeah.
All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Effort Growth live stream. We're here. Let's see. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. Joe is still in Mexico. We're continuing the bouncing around, except for hopefully we'll be in Columbus, we'll be stable for the next few weeks. And so excited to get back into this branding conversation. Last week, as part of the episode, Joe and I had a little exchange about what we thought branding was and, started a little conversation. Colleen in the comments mentioned something about like we should do this as a show topic. And it seems like people are excited to hear about this. And so we're excited to talk a little bit about what brand building means to us individually. Joe's going to take his approach. I'm going to take my approach. We'll go back and forth a little bit. And I think we'll deliver a ton of valuable information about what it means to build your personal and professional brand, specifically with Webflow. So obviously this is a Webflow focused show, and we will be focused on Webflow here. Excuse if I start getting some heavy light. The sun is coming up, which doesn't happen a whole lot in October in Columbus, but there's a window right here that I can't really control. So if it gets real bright and I put my hater blockers on, where are they at? Maybe I'll do this mid-show.
Nice.
What's up,
It's a
Joe?
good look.
Yeah, that's right. That's the Finsweet, like that's the official Finsweet look. Yeah, there we go. What's up, Joe? How you doing?
Great. Really excited about this episode. Right after last week's episode, you wrote to me about this branding episode, and I was thinking about it all week. Branding has been such an important part of what we are doing at Finsweet. So this is a really nice opportunity to talk about that. Super excited. Before we get too much into that, let's get into the announcements. We
Yeah,
have
wait.
some interesting things for you to say here.
Real quick, before we get too far into this thing, let's F and grow.
Oh,
Okay. And again, before
if you don't
announcements,
see
real
the
quick.
intro,
Oh yeah, it's not a real show if you don't see the intro.
exactly.
Let's get some shout outs real quick. Jeremy is in the house. What's up, Jeremy? Wallison, Gabriel says, hey, finally caught a live stream. What's up? We're glad you're here, Gabriel. WKD in the house from Belgium. John Philippe is, what's up? Daniel, Colleen Brady in the house. Hello, Colleen. Magdalena's here. Shane Grady from LA. What's up, Shane? Joe's in the house. Maria, hey, what's up? It's good to see you. Maria has been, we've been missing you on a couple of these streams. So yeah, good to see you back in the crowd there. Let's see. Jeremy's here. Who else is here? Jose is here. Dale Jensen, Babas, Rohan, Armando. I'm sorry. Zach Bujazia. Yo, Zach, what's up? Shout out to Zach. Again, he hosted us last week. Today we're at the Haven Collective here in Columbus. So shout out to the Haven Collective. Greg Dolan is in the house. Mahar, Kenneth. Man, the squad is here today. What is up, everybody? Susan. All right, let's get into it, Joe. You had some announcements. Where are we at?
Let's see. Announcement 1, cookie consent. The Finsweet cookie consent solution for Webflow breaks 10 million monthly hits.
Excuse me?
This is awesome. That means 10 million times our cookie consent solution is loaded on a Webflow site. That's pretty great every month. So we're really excited about that as a team. That means all of you are using our products, and thank you for that.
Wait. We just kind of gloss over 10 million.
10 million. That's a
10
lot.
million loads. So that means that JavaScript file is getting called 10 million times per month. That's a significant little download. What's that been out for 3 months, 6 months, something like that?
Yeah.
So,
and that is going to continue growing. It's a great solution. We're going to continue putting resources into that.
Yeah, exponentially, I imagine that thing will grow.
Yeah.
All right, what's next on the list here?
Events. Some events,
Yeah.
some shout outs. Yeah.
Let's run through some events. Floxy's community is going to be learning about Notion tomorrow. Check out floxyscommunity.webflow.io. Aaron Kornblit has Ben Parker from Webflow and one of the co-hosts of the Visual Dev FM podcast. They're doing something about how to do a BuzzFeed style quiz with Webflow, JavaScript, and a no-code API in Airtable. If you haven't seen any of Aaron's streams, they get in depth on Airtable and how to do cool things with that. So if you're learning about how to bring in some data and do other things inside of Webflow or some of these other tools, great episode for that. And then Thursday, Vlad will be on a panel at Zapier's conference, Zap Connect. Vlad is the CEO of Webflow, for those who may not be familiar. And let's see, in 2 weeks, on the 1st of November, we're doing an open mic and live support desk, like live help desk. So this is organized by our events committee. So there'll be a bunch of people from the community, a bunch of different meetup organizers. We'll be hanging out. We'll be in the gather space. And the stage will be yours for up to 5 minutes at a time. So you can come share a project. You can come ask a question. If you need support, we can, like branch that out. So that's not capped at 5 minutes. So if you have a question, maybe somebody can pull you aside and work on that. And so like, we're just going to start doing this probably once a month-ish. We'll hang out in the space. We'll do show and tell. So come show off your cool projects, something that you built that's interesting. If you've got a cool integration, if you've got some cool interactions, I don't know, whatever it is you're working on and you want to show it off, come to those events. Let's see, I'm going to drop an Airtable registration form into the chat. This is, there's no official need to register, but if you're interested, this will help us kind of have a head count. And then Joe, you want to talk a little bit about the client first assets that have been released?
Yes, absolutely. So we have new client first resources, and I'm going to share this link here in the chat. Client first resources, we are continuing to build our library of available tools for you to learn client first, and that starts in the resource section. We have a new template, Client First Template 6. We also have our live builds posted. So every Thursday, we have been doing a live build, building a section or a page in Webflow using Client First. We have now finished those builds. We have video documentation for them, and now we are releasing them as clonables. So in that resources link, we have a new live build section, and you'll see live build 3 and 4 added. So keep learning this. Keep going hard with Client First because we are doing that. We have a lot more coming with Client First. We are actively working on this, and yeah, super excited for everybody that is learning it and really taking control of this new system.
Nice. Yeah, and client first is going to be, like I saw somebody post the other day, what's the best naming convention in Webflow, and a bunch of people were rattling off client first. It is making the rounds out there. It is valuable for people. I know I wish I had a system like it when I was starting in Webflow, as opposed to just scrambling and learning on my own and making shit up and having a bunch of like, I still think about that now when people download or clone some of my early projects. And I'm like, no, don't judge me for my naming conventions. So
everyone's been there. Everybody has been there.
Right. 1 month after using it religiously, can't recommend it enough. Thanks, Babis. For sure. Client first is awesome, says Mark Tiedman. I love Armando is saying, I love client first. I'm currently using it. Yeah, great. Babis had a question. No, who had that question? Somebody asked a question about, okay, Tommy Gunn was actually asking, how do we cover hosting fees for the script? So the script is just a piece of JavaScript. Where do we host that, Joe?
That is JS Deliver. And yeah, we don't pay for that. That is under the JS Deliver system. From my understanding, yeah, we're not hosting anything of that.
Yeah, we're not hosting any load on that. It's just serving up a JavaScript file. So it delivers the file, it makes a call. Yeah, who knows if it gets up to the hundreds of millions of something like that, though, will that make a difference? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Maybe then we have to do something paid. Sure.
Client first on an existing website with extra styles. Wish me luck. Good luck, Susan McPhee. And then WKD. Client first was definitely a game changer for my Webflow game. Yeah, for sure. Once you get some system and you get some structure to your projects, and you can start like, I guess, moving a lot faster. And I think as Webflow evolves with their components and variants, and they build out this whole little thing that they're working on, like with symbols and nested symbols. And I can only imagine this leads to like real component libraries that you can share across projects. That'll be super cool. And so having that
Totally.
set up with client first to make them interchangeable across the different places, I'm ready for that. Okay. So,
Love it. Love it. One more question from Maria Caraba.
yeah.
What's up with vertical resizing?
Mm,
We had a couple people reach out to us about vertical resizing, which is a line item in our Finsweet extension. We previously had a release date for last week or 2 weeks ago. We forgot to update the UI of the release date. We currently put that on hold, the vertical resizing, and we have completely focused on rebuilding our CMS library. This is a huge change. This is incredibly valuable for you as a community. We're taking our entire CMS library and rebuilding it to be more native to Webflow and to be no code. It is completely attribute based. So that's why we don't have vertical resizing. That's why we took a break from some of the extension updates we had there, but we did not forget about it. We know how to do it. We're going to do that after we do this CMS library rebuild.
yeah. Yeah, and the CMS library is just one of our most popular things. It's all of the features and
Yeah.
functionalities. It's like our most used asset across the entire Finsweet universe. And so modernizing that a bit, bringing it up to speed, kind of getting those assets out for folks to build, because we will deprecate the CMS library after that's done. And so that kind of took a little bit of precedent over some of the extension stuff. But as soon as that's figured out, we'll get back to all of those extension updates. So bear with us as we kind of work and prioritize some of that stuff. Let's see, real quick, going back to client first. Ezekiel, we plan to hire another developer. Client first will be a must. Nice. That's great to
Nice.
hear. Good morning from San Francisco. Just used cookie consent for the first time. It was great. Also still beefing up on client first. Great, great, great. Yeah, lots of people jump in, beginning to wrap my head around client first. After learning client first, yeah, there we go. There's a question for you, Joe. Was
Nice.
Joe a web developer prior to finding Webflow? He knows quite a bit of JavaScript. We've talked about that in an episode, but you want to give a real quick overview, or
We
do you remember
have.
what episode that was?
Sure. I don't remember the episode. I'll give you a preview of it though. I was not a developer at all. I knew nothing about websites before using Webflow. So zero knowledge. The way that I learned JavaScript was a lot of trial error and working with people that do know JavaScript. It's a great way to learn something, interact with people that know it. So we had a JavaScript developer on the team. I always ask questions, and over time, I now understand how JavaScript works. So it's a long process. It's really difficult. It is makes you want to quit, but anybody can learn the basics and the concepts of JavaScript.
Yeah, nice. And we go into depth on that in some of the early
Yeah.
episodes. I know we dive in. I can't remember exactly what episode. I do want to address this question by Anthony Mass. He's saying, "What about if we already implemented CMS library on old projects? Don't worry about that. It will still work. We're not going to like pull that scripts. We're not going to like disable that. We will not continue to update it moving forward." And so we will not
Hmm.
necessarily like provide new updates or upgraded functionality within the CMS library.
Or
And
service.
yeah, service, support, those kind of things will kind of move off to attributes. Attributes is going to make everything a lot easier to use. And this is an opportunity to upsell a client, learn new skills. We talked about betting big on yourself in previous episode, I think 2 episodes ago. And so like this is an opportunity to just kind of learn some new things and create some new opportunities for yourself inside of the world of Webflow.
And Anthony, I think this is going to be so easy to implement that you can just convert your old projects within a few minutes. That's how simple this is. So we've really, really made the process less time consuming and less to think about. No code, it's only attributes. So I'd like to think that you can convert your old projects just to make them better.
Nice,
Yeah, thanks,
nice.
Anthony. Appreciate that.
For sure. Okay, so let's get into the disclaimer here. Let's jump into the meat of the conversation. Today, we're talking all about how to build a badass brand. If you've been following, that's exactly what we're doing here, right? So, like, Finsweet has been growing and building a powerhouse brand in Webflow. Webflow focused. We were one of the first to go all in on Webflow. We're one of the first to go development only on Webflow, and now we're seeing this becoming a trend. Lots of other people are doing this, but we want to talk about what makes a brand good, bad. How do you build it? We're going to go through all the nuances here. But building a brand it's like a complex topic, you know, and everyone kind of has their own approach. So we're going to talk about what it means for us, what's made things successful for us. Joe and I will kind of go back and forth like we usually do on personal experiences as it relates to brand building, etc. And so just know that we won't cover everything. Just like, some of the other topics, we have about an hour here. It's going to be difficult for us to cover everything possibly related to branding. So we'll give you as good as we can what branding is, what branding isn't, what makes a good brand, how to build brand voice and value, and then we'll kind of cover some final thoughts about what's valuable about a brand here. So anyway, Joe, any thoughts on the disclaimer before we jump right in?
No, sounds good. Well, I'll give a disclaimer actually that we probably give on most shows. It's different for everybody. This is the core thing you have to remember, that we're not going to give you a to-do list on how to build your brand. That's up to you. And every single person is going to have a different process, different outcome, and different result.
Yeah.
So make sure you think about yourself and make sure you customize this approach for you and your business.
Yeah. And some people have different needs, like
yeah,
some people
totally
want to build a brand that speaks to lawyers, and some people want to build a brand that speaks to startups. Those two brands are going to speak completely different languages, right? And so it's your job, goal, whatever, to kind of just take some of what we, give as advice here, as our personal experiences, and break that into how do you apply it to yourself. So let's start out with what branding is, right? And this again is a broad strokes, but in my mind, branding is what makes you or your business unique. And we're going to talk a little bit about that unique factor. But it's what other people say about the work you do. And more specifically, it's the emotion or benefit generated by someone else supporting your business, right? So like think about the Red Bulls of the world, the Nikes, the Apple. Apple just had a big event where they released these MacBooks, these new MacBooks and all their new products, whatever. And people were literally like, when people think about Apple releases, there's so much excitement built up. It's like crazy. It's like a cult, right? But that's their brand. People love the technology. They love the cutting edge. They love the new product releases. And Apple has worked hard to build that. There's other people with great products, though, that don't have a brand like Apple. So what is that? What separates that? Joe, what are your thoughts as it relates to that emotional connection? Like, what does it feel like to before doing business, after doing business? Like all of those things kind of go to the brand itself. It's I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think it's the most important part. This emotion that is created, this emotion that is felt when people interact with your brand. This is the most important factor out of anything that we talk about. This is my point of view here. And you need to understand that, I'll say, one of the reasons on the last episode that I said the website's the most important part of your marketing is that this is the first touch point for a lot of people. That you go to somebody's website and right away you have this idea about them. This is a professional company. This company doesn't care about their web presence. These things are first in mind, and it's a lot of how people judge you, and that creates an emotion. And that's why I think the website is very, very important.
Yeah.
So yeah, emotion, it's top.
And that's kind of what kicked off the reason we're doing this episode. I think we touched on this in the intro there, but we had a branding moment in the conversation last week, and I was saying that I didn't think the website is always the centerpiece. That's not that it's not important. I think the website is really important to your brand. But we live in a day of social media. We live in an era of YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and all this other shit. And, lots of people build brands that don't have like big, robust websites. I think what we'll see is a migration towards websites, especially as you see what's happening with censorship and being turned off on your platform. And, you build this big Instagram following, and then all of a sudden your account's gone. And so like, I think you'll see more people want to own the property where they publish, but branding is so broad, right? Like branding is literally, if it's about that emotional connection, anywhere you can make an emotional touch point with somebody becomes a place to build a brand, right? Now, I do agree with what Joe was saying there, that the website is and should be, if you're planning on making a business in Webflow, if you're planning on building a brand in Webflow, then that website should be that first touch point. It should set that first impression. It should set the tone for the type of connection, emotion, benefit, whatever it is that you want to drive in your audience. So I'm going to ask this question to the audience. What does branding mean for you? Who can sum this up as concisely as possible? Because I think YouTube limits your comment count. But I'd like to hear from the crowd right here. What did we get wrong as far as what branding is? Like, have we missed a key point of what makes branding? And I want to ask another question here, because this is where it gets important, right? It's like branding is building this emotional like impulse, right? You want to build impulse, buyer's impulse. You want to get impulse towards a conversion. You want to get like something. You want to build some excitement, right? Some intent, some buyer's intent, some form submission intent, whatever it is. So how do you place yourself? This is the question you have to ask yourself to build a valuable brand. How do you place yourself between that initial feeling, that like thought, that emotion that we've been talking about, and a logical call to action, right? We talk about having a clear call to action on your website, a clear call to action wherever you put potential touch points for that brand building. And so if you're going to become successful, you have to find a route between that emotional connection, your call to action, and how do you put yourself in between that road? Because that's how you're going to build a brand. Joe, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I'd love to talk a little bit about how we approach this on the Finsweet site.
Yep.
It's all about emotion. You feel emotion for a brand based on how unique it is, based on how good the product is, based on how good the service is, based on how good it looks, based on what other people say about the brand. So when we were building our current Finsweet site, our goal, it wasn't necessarily to get you to click a button. We have our call to action, it's there, but that's not the main goal. The main goal was to make you feel like this is crazy, feel like this is something I've never seen before. Like this is color I've never seen before on a website. This is an effect I've never seen before on a website, and just blow you away. That's the main goal. It's all about creating emotion, and we're rebuilding our new site now, and it's the same concept. How can we create this experience that blows you away and really makes you feel something inside? This is really powerful, and it's really that next level of branding thought. How do you get to that emotion?
Yeah. I like what Zach says here. Actually, he says branding is the personality and values of a business. So again, it's that emotion.
Yes.
It's what do you think about a business themselves, right? Like a business is really just like a corporate shield usually, or some kind of corporate entity that allows people to work together towards a shared goal, right? And have some kind of legal liability separating themselves personally from whatever those efforts are. And so like that's what a corporation or a limited liability, like one of those things becomes, right? And so to build a brand around something like that is to really take what makes you interesting, what makes the people who are building that business interesting, and personify them at some level, at scale, right? At some higher level entity, right? Whatever the corporate structure is, whatever the operating structure, even if you're a freelancer, even if it's a personal brand, it's still about taking the best parts of what makes you you and bringing that out into some kind of web persona, right? Whether that's through social media, whether that's through your website, whether that's through content, blogging, whatever it is, you know. So let's see. I think we got a Webster's definition here from Keegan. Consistent look plus messaging that elicits a certain emotional response and develops trust. Okay, yeah. I think the trust is,
Yeah.
yeah, that's one we haven't mentioned yet. We've talked about the emotion. We've talked about the messaging. I guess we haven't talked a lot about messaging yet. But trust is a key, right? You want to build trust. And it's how do you quickly build trust? How do you instantly, again, with going back to the Finsweet reference, when you come to the Finsweet site, you're like, damn, okay, this is beautiful. We make effing sweet Webflow sites. Boom. All right. And then you scroll down and you see this big gallery of the sites that we've built. And immediately there's trust. Immediately, like, okay, they build effing sweet Webflow sites. Here's a bunch of Webflow sites they've built. And look at the variety of design and looks and feel and experience here. Immediately there's a connection. I want to work with these folks. Damn, they do good work. Right. So I agree. Very nice, Keegan. That trust word, I think, is valuable there that we hadn't referenced yet. Joe, any other thoughts there before we go to what branding is not?
Let's read this from WKD. The brand is the emotional feeling that someone has after working with you. In the case of a web designer, just like a circus brand would be what the audience thinks after the show.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Brand is not just what people think about you when they first get to your website or how they think about you over a period of time. It's, I am doing business with this company, buying their product, buying their service, and afterwards, I feel like I got a great value, an okay value, or a bad value.
Yeah.
That goes right into the brand. Absolutely.
And this is something we've talked about this in the sales podcasts or live streams that we've done, where that's where a social sale begins. If you want to generate referrals, if you want to generate long-term business value, you have to think about what is that experience from the moment you take the person's money or complete the transaction until you deliver the promise you made through the sales process. That is the most important time of the sale, because anybody can talk somebody into buying a thing once, right? Like, and in the internet world, you can do that repeatedly, because online you can have these one-off interactions, and until that bad delivery starts taking place and people start bad-mouthing your brand, you can get away with a lot of shit, right? And so WKD nails it here, because you really have to figure out how to make sure that when people get done transacting with you, when they convert, when they do whatever it is that transaction is that you're looking for them to do through this brand, do they have a positive experience? Are they going to go tell somebody a good word about you? Are they going to share a social message? Are they going to follow you on social? Are they going to get involved with your community or whatever the next step is, right? Because that conversion, especially in a digital world, is usually just the first step, right? That initial conversion, that initial sale is like usually step one. Even if you're selling websites, like, are they going to come back and buy from you again, right? Do you have other services that you can sell them? Is there some kind of maintenance, an ongoing agreement, some SEO work, some other stuff that we've talked about? Like those things all come into play related to whether or not that experience delivers. So WKD, another great point there. I really do think that is an important part of the process. And Keegan's clarifying, not actually Webster's definition, just out of my own fat head. Okay, great. Joe, any thought about what we just said there about like that that finish line is really the starting point when you're talking about brand building and long-term value-based sales processes?
Yeah, think about it outside of the Webflow industry also. It's a really important concept. We're all thinking about delivering great experiences to our clients. Also think about it in the context of Apple, delivering great products consistently over years, making people happy. Think about Uber, consistently giving great rides over time. And after you take enough Uber rides, you're like, okay, Uber is a great app. If I'm going to a new city, I'm choosing Uber because I know this one, and they've consistently given me great rides in a different city.
Mm.
So think about this from all areas. Don't just think about your branding in a sense of websites.
Yeah, and Dale brings up a really good point here. Yeah. I think we definitely have influence. Jinx.
on the on the brand experience, but ultimately we're judged by people's personal experiences. Absolutely, Dale. That's a really, really nice idea here. And that actually brings us perfectly into what branding is not. Dale, you're right. Branding is not what you say about yourself. It's about how other people think about you and how other people take on your brand. So if you say on your website, we're great at SEO, you're not a branded SEO company. That's not enough. You need to have real work in SEO that is showing real results and real clients. And branding is not cool design. That's a big one. Uh, Especially in our industry, I think a lot of people look at their brand, look at their logo, look at their colors, and say, this is my brand.
Mm,
This style guide, this website is my brand. And although that's part of your brand, that's not going to get you long-term success with your brand.
right.
So Reimar, what do you think about this idea that cool design is a brand for a web designer?
I think great design can help you build a good brand. I think that content, and because branding is, and we didn't put this in the first notch, but it's really just an umbrella that lays over top of all of the work you do, right? And so under that umbrella, there's a bunch of spokes, right? Or whatever the little rods are that support this umbrella that make up this thing, like, and design can be a part of that. Content can be a part of it. Your socials can be a part of that. Your website is a part of that, right? Like all of these things put together will make up a good brand. But individually, the elements are not enough, right? Because you can have great design and maybe your brand is good design. Okay. And you can use your design to show that off. However, like it's not just the design work because you still have to find clients. You still have to like generate the business. You still have to like create intent, right? And so I don't know if that's a good place to go into what makes it good because I know we have a nice little outline here of what makes a good brand, but the other thing advertising is not is an advertising budget, right? We live in a day and age where anyone can pay to distribute a message, right? But we're also in a time where community is becoming the most important part of how you build this brand and how you actually market. We talk about this all the time, marketing versus community building versus advertising, right? And in my mind, advertising is like the lowest step you can take in product distribution. And if you're using advertising right, you've already discovered where your conversions happened. You've already established a trustable brand, and you're using the advertising to amplify some of that, right? The advertising should be something that helps you grow after you've kind of done all these other things. The problem is a lot of people want to start out with the advertising because they want to hit the ground running. And what you see is that advertising is like heroin for your sales process. It's great while you're doing it, right? But as soon as that heroin dies off, you just like start, okay, where's my next fix? And there's nothing to keep you happy around you other than more advertising, right? Other than another hit of the juice. And you'll never build an organic brand. You'll never build real distribution. You'll never build anything valuable if all you're doing is boosting your efforts for content discovery using advertising. And so the goal here is to figure out how do you build a brand that kind of stands on its own. And then once you get some momentum there, then you can take a little advertising and take that to the next level. Joe, any thoughts on that?
I love that. I want to get a sign on my office that says advertising is heroin. Absolutely. That's like we don't advertise at Finsweet at all. I've never agreed with the model that you have to pay money to bring people in. I'd rather give my time and resources to then bring people in. And that's what we do at Finsweet. We give our time, we give our resources to get that community action, to get those new clients.
Yeah.
So really good. I like that. Great analogy. I want you to think of branding almost like a person, branding yourself. Think about all the things that you have to do as a person to be a good person. So cool design. That's like wearing cool clothes. That's like wearing presentable clothing. Like, yeah, that's going to help you, but that's not everything you need to be a good person, right? We see people that dress so well, but they're idiots or they're terrible people. Doesn't work. You have to communicate well with people. You have to help people. You have to have empathy for people. You need all of these things in your personal life, and that creates your brand. How much people like you, how happy you are in life, how happy the people around you are in life. And this is the same thing for business, that you have so many different aspects to build, to create this brand. It's not one thing. It's not these two things. And I like to think of it like that. I think that's a really powerful way to think about it.
And to kind of continue on that, the complexity of it kind of scales as the business operation grows, right? Because if it's just you and your personal brand, no big deal. You get to set all the
Yeah.
rules, right? But once you start bringing other people into that and you have to manage some kind of consistency and, like it has to all kind of work together and play nice in the same space. Now it comes down to a lot of things we've talked about in other shows, like what type of people are you bringing onto the team? What is their mindset as it relates to your brand, right? This is why the mission, the values, having people who kind of agree and see things not necessarily the same way, but through the same lens is valuable, because a couple bad employees, a couple people who don't buy in with the brand can destroy the whole thing from the inside out. A few negative folks on any team, anybody who's built a team, and you get somebody who's like just always bitching or negative Nancy about whatever, whatever the thing is, like it's contagious. And this is the same thing with a brand, right? Like people love to share the negative emotion more than the positive emotion. So you could do 10 positive transactions and mess one up. And that one person is going to go leave the review. They're going to go write the mean tweet. They're going to go do whatever it is, leave a comment on the YouTube, whatever it is. They're going to do that more often than not on a negative experience than a positive experience. And so again, the negativity becomes contagious, and it can become like a plague. So if you're thinking about building a big brand, if you're building an operation with like multiple people involved, this is a conversation you should have about what direction do you want to take the brand? How are you planning on shaping this brand? And what do you see the finish line looking like if you're successful in that process? Which is a good transition into what makes a good brand, I think. Joe, any thoughts there before we jump right into this next one?
Let's jump right in. What makes a good brand?
Yeah.
Unique. That's the first one on our list. And I love this one. Stands out from the crowd. That when I first started Finsweet, this was my top branding concept. I was a branding newbie. I didn't have any of these thoughts when starting Finsweet, but I said, I always want to be unique, right? If somebody's looking at our website or our client list or something, I want it to be unique. I like that. I think it's cool. So this is one part of what makes a good brand.
Jay.
He
says takeaways from today's stream: 1, people dress like idiots. 2, heroin is good for advertising. That's nice. Sweet stream in a nutshell. Oh man. Okay. So yeah, I want to carry on the unique thing, and I kind of want you to think about this in a sequence, right? So like, what makes a good brand? A unique story that invites relatable action, right? So like there's 5 elements here. Unique, it stands out from the crowd. The story catches your attention. Invites, so it pulls you in to take the next step. Relatable, it connects with the audience. And action, can people take the next step, right? So a unique story that invites relatable action, right? And this is not like a metric. I don't know. I thought about this last night as I was writing these notes. This isn't like it doesn't create like a cool anagram or what is it? I don't know what they call those things.
Yep.
But it's a good way to think about these things. So let's go through. Joe talked about unique, standing out from the crowd. Now, this is not just like ugly design can stand out from the crowd too, right? And sometimes that works. Sometimes that's less important. But what we're talking about here is value. We always talk about value delivery, building value, creating value for the audience, giving back to the audience. And so, finding a way to stand out from everybody. And usually the story is what helps you do that, right? The story is what catches your attention. That's what pulls you in, or at least gives you the opportunity. I always talk about in a sales process, there's 2 sales you have to make anytime you want to sell anything. First, you have to convince people why they should listen to you, and then you can sell them on whatever it is you're trying to sell, right? And so if you skip the first step, most people jump right into step 2, right? They just go, I want to sell some stuff, and this is why you should buy from me. This is like LinkedIn. Every message you get on LinkedIn, right? It's like, hey, connect, and then, oh, hey, I can offer value. It's like, you got to convince me, why should I listen first, right? And that's story. That's why big story is so important. We are a storytelling species. Like, we evolved by telling each other stories. And before we had written history, before we had anything like what we're doing here today with broadcasting to people on the internet, it was just folks sitting around telling stories, stories about life, stories about society, stories about whatever. And so we are ingrained to just fall into stories. And this is why the best brands wrap their whole process inside of stories. Stories you can repeat, stories you can tell, stories that are fun, stories that are engaging, and stories that, again, invite you to explore more. Um, Acronym is the word I was looking for there. Thanks, thanks, Jay. Um, Joe, keep going on exploring more. Invites. Do you want to take that one?
Sure. Invites sucks you in to explore more. This starts to go into the call to action. You can be cool and do everything that you want and everybody loves you, but there needs to be some meaning behind it. Something that has that person say, I want to do business with this company. I want to buy their service. I want to buy their product. What do you have to offer that that person needs? And why should they go and get that from you?
Yeah.
And you need to be really open about this. Hey, I'm giving you this, and this is why you want it. Like Apple. Hey, we have the iPhone. We have the MacBook. This is what we are giving to you. We're inviting you to come buy it.
Yeah.
We're inviting you to come buy it in our fancy store, in our fancy keynote, in our fancy marketing campaign. And yeah, this is like getting into the sales
But
mindset of your
let's
brand.
stay on that example just for a second, the Apple thing, because the Apple brand is more than just a single device. The Apple brand is the ecosystem, right? The Apple brand is the cool factor. It's the cutting edge, right? And so it's taken them years to build that, right? So like that's why people line up for the next product, right? I love having my MacBook talk to my iPad, talk to my iPhone, talk to my Apple TV. Like it's all part of the ecosystem. I'm not going anywhere. I don't care what comes next. I don't care what like Apple would really have to screw some
Yeah.
shit up for me to step away from that ecosystem. Now, I'm not saying I won't buy a product outside of the ecosystem, but it's got to be a real value add to get past that. And this is again a brand that like this is a story that brands tell, like successful brands build this kind of like thing. Webflow's doing it. Webflow, like people joke about like, oh, Webflow developers are a cult, like they're just no, we understand the value. We understand the story. We understand the opportunity of opening up this no code world to people with visual software development, right? And that becomes something people get really excited about, right? That sucks you in to learn more. You see their content, it pulls you in. It's relatable. It connects with a specific audience. We're all designers, creatives, tinkerers, online, whatever it is, web developers who were looking for the next tool. What is the next thing? I remember when I found Webflow, I was not convinced. It took me a long time to buy into the Webflow and to step away from WordPress and to really understand what's happening here. But once that triggers, boom, I've connected with a specific audience, right? And so also going back to the brand building thing, like you have to know who your audience is. You can't just build a brand for everyone. You're not Facebook. And Facebook didn't start like Facebook. Facebook started selling like social profiles to college kids, and their audience was very specific at one point. And now it's grown and become bigger. But like early on in the stages of building your brand, you really should look for, a specific audience to talk to. We talked about niching down before. Maybe that's something you want to do, maybe not. But either way, you need to know who you're talking to so that you can understand how to speak to them, right? Again, are you talking to lawyers? Are you talking to startups? Are you talking to, tech folks? Are you talking to teachers? Like where and what is the messaging that's specific for these folks to actually connect? And then what is the action that people can take, right? Clearly defining that call to action or the next step so that, again, once you've built the trust, you've told the story, you've built that buyer impulse, well, then there's the logical step. We talked about the question you have to answer to build a brand is how do you get from that emotional response to the logical call to action, and how do you connect that path? And so that's literally, what we've outlined here. Joe, any thoughts to tie that up?
It's a process. This is such a process. People need to understand that you can't just say, this year I'm going to build the brand. And after that year, it's built. This is a multi-year thing that has to happen. This is a multi-year project, building a brand. And let's go back to the person example. You can't just snap your fingers and become a good person in 6 months. This takes time. It takes time to build meaningful friendships. It takes time to do all of these things. A lot of people leave in business or fail in business because they don't wait that time for the branding to happen, or they are not handling their branding correctly. So be patient.
Yeah.
Gear all of these words to you and be very patient about how people look at you long term.
Yeah, Riley makes a good point here. A great timeless piece of great brands is having the character of being consistently memorable in a brand's presentation as well as impression. So, yeah, again, making that
Nice.
emotional connection, but consistently delivering that value and having some kind of ongoing touch point, right? Like, what's the positive touch point? Where are you reconnecting that emotional experience as you go through the process? Great point, Riley, as we go through here. And Keegan's saying LinkedIn messages are worse than a used car lot. Yeah. Who I saw somebody on Twitter the other day, they said they just accepted like 100 LinkedIn messages. And I was like, oh, or LinkedIn connection invites, just blindly, just went through and accepted all. And I was like, oh, dear. Good luck with that.
Why does LinkedIn do that? They're turning into a spam platform.
It's so
What's up
bad.
with that?
I don't know.
And and
Talk
look
about a
at that. That's
brand,
a bad brand move. Yeah,
right?
that's a bad brand move. Absolutely. We are talking about how we have a negative experience on their platform. We shouldn't be having this conversation. We should be saying, "Oh, I met someone great on LinkedIn. I did something great on LinkedIn. I shared a great post on LinkedIn." But no, usually we're talking about spam.
Yeah.
So, why?
Li- LinkedIn is its own universe, and there's value there to be had, but like, man, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see. Dale had a good point here. It's clear that creating value and building community around that value exponentially help build brands. Do that. Yeah, community is one of the biggest things you can do to help grow your brand because again, what is the key part of a brand? It's other people talking about the work you do. When you build community, you're essentially creating an environment where other people can talk about the work you do. And so the better you get at building community, the better you get at building your brand. 100%. It's why community is exploding right now as the core marketing channel for authentic relationships, especially in a SaaS driven business, right? If it's a transactional one time sale, doesn't really matter about the community, right? Like I buy a car once every 4 or 5 years, maybe six, seven, who knows, right? Depending on your cycle. I don't really need to have a community with my dealership. I'm looking for the best deal. That's very transactional, right? Community is probably not going to help car dealerships, although they still will sponsor the local ball team, the local whatever, right? The nonprofit here. They do find ways to build community in that space even. But when we're talking about SaaS businesses, which is what we're all trying to build, when we're talking about the web, a community is important because it's that consistency that Riley was talking about, that Dale talks about here. It's about constantly bringing up that emotional connection. You got to remind people sometimes, like, oh yeah, this is why Finsweet's so great, right? Like, and creating this environment where it's not just led internally by us, but it's by supporting other folks to do what they do, right? If you're using cookie consent, or if you're using client first, if you're using the CMS library, and you're able to solve a problem for yourself, well, you're probably going to go share that with somebody else. And this becomes an opportunity to build a brand. And so this is why we talk about a clonable being so valuable for brand building, or some like useful resource in the community that other people can use, because it helps other people find something of value that you created and help, and they'll share it. They're more likely to share that with a broader audience, which again goes back to creating that, reciprocal engine.
And it's great that we are in an industry where community really does matter. You gave a great example of the car dealership, not really community type business, but this is the community business. This is such a powerful and dynamic community, and everybody needs something, right? Nobody says, "Oh, I have all of the tools and all of the resources I ever need for websites." It's impossible.
Right.
So you now have the opportunity to give people those resources at any level, the beginner
Right.
level, the intermediate level, the advanced level.
Yeah. Let's see. There was a couple comments I wanted to point out here. Brandon Tancott makes a good point. Being authentic is key to long-term brand consistency. 100%. If you're pretending,
Yeah.
going back to Joe's analogy of a person, right? You'll always get discovered as a fraud,
Yeah.
And there's nothing
Yeah.
worse than getting
Always.
exposed in a setting where you just like, get your pants dropped and everyone gets to see who you actually are. Like it's not a cool thing. So I agree. Being authentic is super key. Any thoughts on that, Joe?
And let's go to the LinkedIn example. I think we have these negative feelings about the spam because immediately when you go on that platform, your first thought is there's a lot of unauthentic people trying to connect with me, trying to
Yeah.
send me a message. So you go in not with the feeling of authentic, but the feeling of fake or scammy or
Right.
spammy.
Right.
So, yeah, being authentic, that is a key. And you have to do that over a very long period of time. And it's
Yeah.
difficult, it's not an easy thing to do.
Zach saying here, for my business, a big draw to Webflow is the trust I have that everything will work. Having every feature is not as important as having every feature work. Reliability is huge for branding.
Yeah,
That goes back to
totally.
authenticity, consistency, community. Yeah, all of those things. Again, they're building the umbrella that is the brand, right? And this is where you get to a brand voice and consistent value, right? So we made the transition into the segment here that you need to find, and we've talked about this, so we're probably not going to spend a ton of time on this section here because we've already talked about building your voice and building consistent value. If there's one thing we harp on in all of these episodes, it's finding the place where you can deliver value on a consistent basis to your clients, to your audience, to your community, to whatever it is. And that voice just becomes the language. And this is where the design comes into play, right? Because your voice is visual. Your voice is expresses the authenticity. It expresses the connection, and so again, speaking to a legal group versus an engineering group versus a tech startup, like those are all going to be different voices, and you have to find the one that allows you to do the things we've talked about. How do you build that emotional connection? How do you build a road to your logical call to action, right? How do you create that process? So, Joe, any thoughts on brand voice and value? I mean, Finsweet has, effing sweet in the name. We've got a very specific brand voice, right? Like we're bold,
Yeah.
it's in your face, it's kind of over the top a little bit. But so are our websites and so are our designs and so is our approach to a lot of this. So like that's the Finsweet voice. Talk a little bit about developing that, becoming confident in that, you know, um, feeling free to just kind of explore that. Maybe share some of that with the audience.
Yeah. We did not always have this brand voice. We had to grow into this brand voice that day one or year one or even year two of Finsweet, nobody knew it was effing sweet. We did not have this bold over the top website or bold over the top branding. It just didn't exist because we were still learning. We did not have the work to back that up. And I think that would be a mismatch. So we got to a point where I felt comfortable in the industry, in everything to say, hey, let's now take this brand to the next level. We have the work to show for it. We have the skills to show for it. Now let's create this wonderful experience. So it took years, of thinking, what do we want? How are we going to do it? And our work, is our service representative of what we are showing visually, of what we are saying about ourselves? A big process.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I'd like to, get into this final thought segment with a question for the audience, asking like what did we miss? What do we miss as it relates to branding, to developing the voice, like to building your audience, to having kind of like to building that path from emotional connection to building trust to delivering a clear call to action. I don't know why I really like this really sticks to me, that unique story that invites a relatable action, right? It's like a single sentence that kind of encapsulated what branding is. So to like What did we miss, community? As you're out here watching, as you're out here thinking and listening through this stream, leave it in the comments real quick. Leave a thought about like did we like look over anything? Did we get anything completely wrong? Like Joe, any thoughts here? Actually, I saw let's see what Lizzie says here. She says something. Was it Jeff Bezos who said your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room? Love that. Yeah. And that's kind of like a
Nice.
reputation that goes back to that personal reputation. It's like
Hmm.
there's another thing. It's like it kind of goes along the same thing. It's about like what you do when other people aren't watching. It's like are you a good person? It's like I don't remember, but there's another kind of um, oh, what's the term I'm looking for? I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. Zach,
That
good.
that last one goes really well into the person that dresses really well, but maybe doesn't have any substance to them as a person.
Mm,
In public, everyone's going to say, "Wow, amazing! You look great. Everything's great." But behind that person, when that person's not listening, they'll say, "This person's fake. I don't like this person. They're manipulative. Whatever."
yeah.
So, yeah, this is a really, really powerful thing.
And this actually brings up an interesting point that goes back to maybe connecting the dots between how we got started in this conversation. And that is that we're in an age where looks and superficial connections really can lead to building a brand, right? Think about Instagram influencers. It's like, let me show my half naked body on screen and I can build a following. However, most of those folks, when they try to sell something, have a very difficult time getting that audience to convert because it's very superficial, right? And so, again, we all love to be and see the person who dresses nice and like, oh, whatever, that's cool at a distance. But when that person comes up and actually opens their mouth and they sound like a ding dong because they don't know anything about anything, you're instantly like, oh, fuck this, you know? And so, yeah, I think it all comes down to doing these things in step. You can fake a lot of this stuff online. You can do a lot of stuff on social to build a brand. But where the website really comes into play is when you want to turn that brand into an actionable next step, right? The website is where you own, it's the piece of property where you get people to come convert, right? So social media becomes your highway. And how do you get folks off of this highway onto your little exit ramp? And the website is that exit ramp. It's where you can control the entire platform. You can control the message. You can control the design. You can control the substance and everything about it, the entire experience, front to back, from before they convert to after they convert. And this is why the website is such an important part of that brand building process, because it's what allows you to take the next step in building an effective brand. You can do all the glowy, the showy, show me whatever on social, but you're just like the person Joe was talking about that's dressed nice with no substance, right? The website is where you meet this person. It's where you actually get to know someone. It's the first date, if you will. So, any thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, really, really well said. Let's bring up that comment from Zach.
Yeah.
The 54 minutes into a brand discussion, we haven't heard the word logo once. Branding is so much more than a logo. Yeah, Zach, absolutely correct. Logo is part of it. Logo is how people may remember you, but that's not how people feel about you. Logos very rarely invoke emotion by themselves.
Yeah.
They are emotional based on what that brand is.
Well, and the logo comes from building a brand, right? Before anybody knew what the Nike swoosh was, Nike was nobody. And then Nike became
Right.
somebody. They built a beautiful brand, and then everybody wanted the swoosh on the stamp. They wanted it on the shoes, they wanted it on the shirt, they wanted it whatever, because that mark represents the brand, right? The logo, the mark represents the brand. The brand doesn't represent the logo, right? The brand can change the logo and still be the brand. We see this happen all the time. Even if we think they do a bad job of redesigning the logo, doesn't matter. Brand stands, right? And so the logo, just like an artist, right? Like your signature, like it's the mark you make to kind of encapsulate what is this brand. And sometimes that can be a beautiful mark. Sometimes it can be a simple mark. It can be complex, whatever. That's not relevant. But if the brand isn't there, the logo means nothing, right? So a lot of people spend a lot of time worrying about, we got to get the right logo, perfect, this, that, the other. No, you kind of have to have traction. You have to build trust. You have to deliver value. And then eventually you can have a mark that will represent that reputation. And this is what a logo is.
Nice. Love it.
Brandon, the why is key to the belief in a brand and why we follow them. Yeah, always start with why.
Yeah, nice.
Jay saying
And
Joe
that
loves
a lot of
clothes.
that comes with the story.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, a lot of that comes with the story. And Jay, I actually do not like clothes.
I was just gonna say that's the opposite of that. I think Joe and I are very similar in that regard. We're like, yeah, just give me some V-necks and jeans. You know, a couple pair of jeans, V-necks in different colors, some simple stuff. I don't think either of us spends a lot of time dealing with the clothes. We do, however, look a lot for the substance. All right, we're looking below the
Yeah.
surface on what's behind that. Um, let's see, Jeremy. I
And
think. Go ahead.
I have to pick up on this, the clothes metaphor here. When I'm looking for clothes, I'm not necessarily looking for what looks the best. I'm looking for reliability in the maker of the clothes. I'm looking at where it was made. I'm looking at the material. I'm looking at all these other aspects of the clothes. It's not just what it looks like. It's actually one of the least important things that I look at. So the clothes goes right into the brand. It's more than just what it looks like. There's a lot of other aspects in there.
Yeah. Let's see. Jeremy was saying, I think you summed it up. The story, if authentic, draws people in and then needs to be followed up by action. Yeah, 100%.
Nice.
Colleen's saying confidence as a component. Joe referenced having the work to back up the brand, also having a unique point of view and knowing what that is. Yeah, knowing the value deliver, understanding the value deliver, and that builds as your brand grows, as like do this more successfully, you will become more confident that you can do that again. And so, yeah, confidence is key. We talk about this all the time. Like people can smell desperation. And so this is why you need to be not overly or obnoxiously confident, because that can go the other way too. But you need to kind of be indifferent, about whether you need a project or not. Let people come to you, right? You don't want to seem too eager beaver, and you don't want to seem too like, whatever, right? You need to find the balance between that, to get folks to really just coming in and doing, long-term business with you. Kenneth got an unrelated timeline here. Why did you remove your about section on the Finsweet section about your own story? I think you may be talking about the story, the strategy, Finsweet strategy, not the about page. I think, Kenneth, is what you might be referencing. It was your story page at some point, I think. Yeah, I think this is the Finsweet
Yeah.
strategy page.
So the Finsweet strategy page has taken over that page. And Kenneth, the reason why we have taken that down, that story page, the quick and easy timeline, is because we are now going through a sort of rebranding, in a sense of we are updating our processes. We are creating better ways to do things internally. We are creating a new website. And part of that is redefining what that story is. So I remember a few months ago, I wanted to take it down because I felt like it no longer represented the brand and it needed some work to recraft that story. So you can find a lot of that at Finsweet Strategy. I believe that's finsweet.com/strategy. And we are going to have a new website with a brand new story for
Nice.
you. Great.
Dale is saying so many interesting people here with so many interesting comments. Yeah, I think that's one of our favorite parts of doing this is coming and getting to interact with you all, which kind of brings me to a closing thought here is that we have finally hooked up a gather space with some significant bandwidth. So we will have up to 80-person capacity through the end of the year. If we hit that level, we're going to grow. We're going to bump it up to the next step. We're talking with Webflow right now about some of the community stuff. We've presented a rough budget to them. We're working to finalize that budget. So anybody who's been following our community alliance conversation, we're making progress on some of that stuff. And we're meeting as an internal team, as a committee, to plan this stuff. And so the space that we're building, that we're going to be using in Gather, is going to be like a mall, right? So if you want to shop inside the mall, if you want a place inside of this to kind of build your community and kind of daisy chain on top of all this other stuff that we're doing, it's going down, right? It's going to start happening. I'd recommend reaching out. Hey, Colleen, do we have the link for the events committee? Can we share that with me, I think in Slack, and I'll post that here and pin that, so that people can get involved with what's coming, because we're going to keep doing tons of meetups. We're going to double down on these streams, on the live builds, on the live support, on some of the structured networking stuff. And so some of the incubator stuff that we've been talking about is going to be pulled into like structured business networking. And so going into this next year, right now we're kind of in a planning phase. We're in a sorting some things out phase. We're going to, again, reveal a new brand. We're going to organize a bunch of different things. So like there's a lot coming. Just bear with us as we figure out how to do this right. You know, we want to make sure that we put our best foot forward so that we can continue building the brand that we've built, but also let people jump on that train and build their brands off the back of that, right? Because the goal here is to pay it forward. The goal here is to really create opportunities for you all to come and, you know, stand on our shoulders, right? We're standing on Webflow's shoulders a little bit. You can come stand on our shoulders a little bit. And at the end of that, it makes us all taller, right? Like we all grow, rising tide. So, Joe, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, great episode. I really enjoyed talking about this branding stuff. So if you liked it too, give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe, a follow, check us out on other platforms, and tell us that you want this type of content. You can go to finsweet.com/vote and tell us different things that we should be doing, adding features to different products. You can go to finsweet.com/growth to recommend new growth topics for this show. Nice. So please check those out. We do a lot of our episodes based on what you tell us to do. And if you like the branding, let's keep this conversation going.
Yeah. I just shared a link for the events committee if you're interested in getting involved. Again, this is a group of folks that are meeting fairly regularly. We're the ones that hosted the open house. We're part of the Clone Comp organizing team. We're a bunch of meetup organizers. So individually, we're all hosting meetups in different places. We're all starting to work together now. We're all starting to figure out how do we best pull our resources to just do the most we can for this community. So if you're interested in that, take a look at the link that we just shared from the Finsweet channel. And I think that's all we got for this episode. Joe, yeah. Any other final thoughts?
Keep growing your brands. Keep us updated. If you do something cool, if you took a piece of great information on this show and you implemented it in your business, let us know on the next show, in a message, whatever. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. And if you're watching this in the future, share your thoughts in the comments or leave a thought. We're going to start highlighting some of those. Joe and I were talking before the show. We get like a lot of good comments on the episodes after the episodes, like downstream, you know, so like we publish something, it sits out there for a couple weeks and people come back with really nice refined thoughts and leave those as comments sometimes. So we're going to start highlighting some of that stuff on the show. And just again, sharing knowledge, sharing thoughts back and forth. So anything we can do to help on that, or any ideas you all have about how we can do this better or take it to the next step, we want to hear that in the comments. So let's see. Jay Poucher, I bought a house with the money I made from Webflow. Go Jay.
Nice.
Balling out. There you go. Yeah. Let's see. Likes helps tons. Great stream. Yeah. If you're watching and you haven't liked this episode, or if you're not subscribed, more importantly, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. So we're gonna start doing as much of this as we can. I'm not gonna say we're gonna start doing more, because I think we're gonna get back to our twice a week So we'll probably do something Thursday. We'll do like a live build, hangout. Maybe we'll test the new Gather space. Yeah, I don't know. Stay tuned for an email on that. If you're not subscribed, head over to thegrowth.finsweet.com or finsweet.com/growth and sign up for email updates there. That's where we keep everybody up to date on all the stuff that's happening with this live stuff. So other than that, I think that's it. Joe, any final thoughts? Nothing else?
Yeah.
We good to go?
All good. Yeah.
All right. Let's effing grow.
Great
See you
show.
guys next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, done. We're out.